Welcome to We're Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry Bowden.
You're listening to We're Gonna Run It.
What's your game plan?
Can they run, but will they run? If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
Gutless. We're gonna run it.
We're gonna play blue collar. Enjoy it. I said it. Have a little heart and have some stones.
We're gonna run it.
If you want to throw an RPO, you got to run first, pass second. That's why it's not called a PRO. It's an RPO. You got to start with a running game that puts people on their heel.
Take a look at my algo. His algo is used with all data from last year. You're so smart, you're stupid.
We're gonna run it.
And the people that believe that talking head are even stupider than what I thought. I said it.
If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
You got no shot to get back into the series. No shot. I said it. What's your game plan?
We're gonna run it.
Oh, baby, we are going to run it straight into week number 9 right here on Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry Bowden. Top 25 battles across the landscape of college football, not just in the SEC, but we have big matchups in the ACC and Big Ten that we're going to break down, Coach. But overall, I think when we look at it, there's one team to beat in college football. That is Ohio State, the defending national champions, and then everybody else, even though Alabama and Georgia are playing well right now, Indiana undefeated, everybody's trying to chase Ohio State defensively. They are the team to beat, and we still don't know who's going to win a national championship in week number 9.
Well, no, I think we've got 2 or 3 teams that are on top. I don't think anybody would suggest that Ohio State seems to have elevated itself above everybody else, and I think Indiana probably second. Both teams in the Big Ten, but there are other teams that are just getting better and better that we can see giving competition to those teams. Specifically talking about Alabama and Georgia and Texas A&M, and so we've got some excellent teams. So still got a lot of football to be played, a lot of big games this weekend that are not only going to make some people be contenders, but they're going to start eliminating people from that national championship process.
I think it's separation Saturday in the SEC. We have A&M that's undefeated, LSU with a 15% shot to potentially make the college football playoff. If LSU loses, they are dead and buried. They're on life support already after the loss to Vanderbilt. But if they lose this weekend, they are done. And maybe Brian Kelly will have to answer the critics up until this point. Weeks, most likely their star linebacker is out. We'll break down that game a little bit later. Texas does go on the road to Miss State. That's a statement game for the Longhorns. It's back-to-back road games. They have not looked good. They're a 27-1 shot right now to potentially win a national championship. On the outside, looking in at least right now at an SEC title. But they have to get consistency. I think that's the biggest thing for Steve Sarkisian and the crew. And then for Oklahoma and Ole Miss, it's an elimination game. Both teams have one loss. It's back-to-back road games for Lane Kiffin and Trinidad Chambliss. Can this offense look the way it did last week against Georgia, against one of the best defenses in all of the nation in Oklahoma?
Well, I think from the SEC standpoint, this is probably the critical game. Because we'll find out just where Ole Miss stands. And, and Oklahoma's been up and down. It was Oklahoma at the beginning. Then they lost their quarterback, and they weren't very good for a little bit. And then they got him back, and he started him too early. And now they're playing pretty well, and it's a defense that can play with anybody. And this is going to be a great game because Ole Miss needs to come back and show they're still in the big picture. And they're going to have a chance to do it against one of the best defenses in the country. In fact, the very best defense in the country. Oklahoma, now that they have their quarterback healthy, not just back, but back and healthy, I'm talking John Mateer, with that defense, are they as good as we think they might be now that they got all their guns loaded with their best talent? So that's going to be a big game in the SEC this weekend, Oklahoma and Ole Miss.
I think it's just interesting from the breakdown, right? Yeah. A lot of people and a lot of handicappers out here, West Coast, East Coast, love South Carolina last week.
Right.
The fact that they were home, I think people weren't buying into Oklahoma being a legit contender just because they lost to Texas. Oh, it's the same old Oklahoma that we saw last year. That was 6-7 overall. They're going to limp down the stretch, one of the hardest SEC schedules. And they took it right to South Carolina right from the get-go. It was a blue-collar game, 14-0. Oklahoma jumps up. They were able to run the football for $171 on that front seven. Mateer looked sharp. Defensively, they shut down Lenora Sellers in that offense. And I think that was a head scratcher for a lot of people. And now that's why you're seeing them as a 4.5-point home favorite. What's going to be intriguing to me in this game is we talked about Ole Miss. I think everybody was shocked, including me and you respectively, that they got 30-plus points on Kirby's defense, right? You plug that game on, they score on their first possession. You're like, okay, adjustments, no problem. Second possession, boom, they're scoring. Georgia goes toe-to-toe. Before you could blink, it was 21-16 basically at the half, and you're like, wait a second now, Georgia's being exploited. Georgia made adjustments, but they still were able to put up 35, and I think that's the most – when you take that game away last week in Athens, as good as Georgia's offense was, a lot of people came away impressed with Lane Kiffin and Trinidad Chambliss on the offensive side of the football.
And no doubt about it. Although they lost the football game, they got tons of respect in the way they played Georgia. And, they never got stopped until the last couple of series. They drove 75 yards, 12 plays, 75 yards, 12 plays. I want to say 5 or 6 possessions, they scored touchdowns. The thing it is, Georgia kept doing the same thing to them. And then at the very end, after halftime, and Kirby Smart did his usual thing, made adjustments, saw corrections, got things moving in the right direction. They held two big series. They stopped Ole Miss in the final couple of drives, drove down, went ahead, won the game. And so good job, Ole Miss. I think they impressed a lot of people, but Georgia clearly showed that they have overall a better football team. Now Ole Miss has a chance to go in this weekend against Oklahoma, the number one defense, not just in the SEC, but the number one defense in the country. Ole Miss takes a very top offense into the country, and many people would say this is one of the brightest offensive minds, Lane Kiffin, against one of the brightest defensive minds in Brent Venable.
Yeah, interesting, right? Best offensive coordinator, head coach,
right.
Best defensive coordinator, potentially head coach, and let's get it on in that matchup. I think the one takeaway as well, different Ole Miss team this year than last year. Why do I say that? Last year, they had statistically one of the best front sevens in the SEC. They held opposing offenses with Walter Nolan in that defensive front to 80 rushing yards per game. Fast forward to this week, entering week 9, they're giving up 150 plus to opposing offenses, right? Georgia pounds the rock for 221, 4.5 yards per carry. Oh, by the way, Oklahoma rushed for $171 on South Carolina. So if Ole Miss is going to cover this 4.5, that defense better bring it on Saturday. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that separates Oklahoma from the Oklahoma that lost 26-6, I think, or 23-6 to Texas, is that John Mateer is healthy. They brought him along too quickly, probably wasted him in that game, should have held him back. Now he is healthy, playing well. And when you put a quarterback that has his talent with a top defense, it changes the whole personality of the football team. And I think that's why we are so anxious to see what the real Oklahoma team is now, with a great defense and a healthy quarterback against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is going to have to play a great game, because I guarantee you Brent Venables is going to put pressure on that quarterback from the first play till the last play.
Absolutely. I'm going to still lean with the better defense in Oklahoma. This is a game.
Yeah.
It's not one of my better picks, but I do lean to Oklahoma because of the physicality, because of back-to-back road games. I worry about Trinidad Chambliss and that team mentality-wise, because, again, this is a team that still has everything in front of them in Ole Miss. Both teams do. But if they lose, then they're automatically done, right? They'll fall out of the top 15. They could be on, the top 25 maybe at that particular point, depending upon what transpires this weekend. But they're going to have an uphill battle to get back into the race and just win out, just the way they were last year. And they had a shot, but they couldn't do it. And then what does that mean for Lane? Does he check out because he's going to take the Florida job after this game? Isn't that another factor that we have to, when you're thinking about mindset, when you're thinking about, for Lane, he's a great head coach, right? Yep. But in the back of his mind, he could be saying, well, I'm playing with house money. I lose this game. Sign on the dotted line in Gainesville on Sunday morning and things are good, right? He's playing with house money for the most part.
Look what Curt Cignetti did. Curt Cignetti, the hottest name in football, when Indiana made an offer, he accepted it publicly. He said, I'm going nowhere. This is where I'm going to hang my hat. Lane didn't do that. He kind of left it out there as a possibility. Now, he said maybe I'll address it at the end of the season, but the very fact is he didn't let it go. Now, I think Ole Miss will be glad to pay him whatever he wants there. If he is comfortable, he can make a living there. But there is another level. Or Ole Miss, you're going to be an underdog in more games than you would be at maybe a top Florida or top Alabama. And so he's got to look at that. And I will say this, knowing and coaching against those two coaches, that with Cignetti, to me, his whole thing is, I just want to be respected as an outstanding coach. I don't have to be this or that. I just want people to say, you know what, I've been a good coach wherever I've been, and I'm comfortable right here. Lane Kiffin is a little different personality. I think he wants to be the highest paid coach in the country, and I think that means a little bit more to him. I would not be shocked if in about a month he is the highest paid coach in the country.
We'll see how it plays out. It is an intriguing battle. It's an afternoon kick in Norman. Coach and I, so you're taking Oklahoma with the picks?
Yes, I am taking Oklahoma with the picks. I think with the quarterback healthy and the way their defense is playing, I do believe Oklahoma is going to get them at home.
Yeah, we'll see how that game plays out. Let's talk about an under-the-radar game.
Yeah.
And it's in the SEC, but you know me with these teams. Arkansas and Auburn. So we talked last week, right? Yeah. Arkansas, it was one of the top third down offenses going up against the best third down defense in the country in Texas A&M. Something had to give, right? That kick was supposed to be at 3:30. They delayed it 2 hours, and you're like, oh, here we go. No rain. Let me tell you, what a ball game. Back and forth, A&M and Arkansas. Comes right down again. 45-42, that Taylor Green and that offense are humming, baby. But there is torrential rain coming through Arkansas yet again. It's not going to stop, Coach, supposedly until Sunday morning or afternoon. So now we have two teams that are winless in the conference. You have Auburn at 0-4. You have Arkansas at 0-3, 0-7 combined. Great defense versus a great offense. If you could combine them, we have probably the best team in the SEC, but we don't.
Absolutely.
I'm saying this right now. I've been on Arkansas every week, but I think emotionally now, after you lose to Tennessee, you lose to Texas A&M, you lose to all these teams down the stretch, close games, right? How many more close games could this Arkansas team play? They played Notre Dame. I mean, the gauntlet is real. I think, honestly, this is the game they potentially fall off a cliff. I'm going with DJ Durkin and that defense that shut down the run. That's what Auburn wants to do anyway. In the slop, Auburn outright over Arkansas. What do you think?
Boy, I tell you, I understand everything you're saying, and Auburn cannot score points. They've got all kinds of problems. They're not. I don't know if they can do anything different offensively to get more. But their defense, as well as it is, how much can they cut the scoring by Arkansas? Texas A&M could not keep the score down. They had to win, 45-42
right
against Arkansas. And as much as my old Auburn, where I coached, I'd love to see them get on the victory side. I'm tending to lean towards Arkansas in this game at Arkansas. I think, and I know they're about to that point where they said enough is enough. I'm going to think about where I want to play next year, I'm going to hang with Arkansas. They are such a good team.
I love
with
them.
a point scoring. And I just think they're going to get one more point, one more touchdown. I just think their offense is as good, if not a tad better than Arkansas and Auburn's defense. It should be an interesting game. And it all depends on which you want to lay your money on, Arkansas's offense or Auburn's defense.
I'm going with the defense in the slop. It's almost like the mutter. You go to the horse track and you take the team that could run in the slop. I'm taking Auburn. They've lost 2 games. Arkansas's lost 5 straight. They've lost the last 2 and covered, though. They've covered against Tennessee as basically a 9.5, 10-point dog. They also covered against A&M as a 7.5-point dog. They lost both by 3 points. We'll see exactly how that game plays out. Coaches on Arkansas, I'm going to take a shot. I think Auburn actually breaks through this weekend, especially in years past. I found out through just betting on games. When you have a team that loses in overtime in these 2 and 3 overtimes, typically the team that loses the following week gives you a bounce back effort for some reason. I don't know why. The team that typically wins in these crazy overtime games, after that they play, they get either blown out or they come out flat. It's weird. Yeah. But we'll see how this plays out. It's a 12:45 kick too.
Yeah, in Arkansas, let's say that, for Auburn, I'm saying if their backs were ever against the wall, if Hugh Freeze's back was ever against the wall, it is against the wall this week because people don't understand how good. If you're not following Arkansas, you really don't know how good they are. They fired their coach. They've lost 4 in a row, but they are a very, very good football team. And if they play their best, shoot, they're almost. They're a team that almost ought to be in a bowl game.
I know,
be a good, solid team.
I know. I'll give props. Favorite player on Arkansas is running back Mike Washington. I actually thought I had to look this up. The kid's from New York, but that's besides the point. Kid runs with an attitude. I look at him on the screen. I go, kid's got to be about 5'10", 210 pounds. Yeah. Coach, I looked it up. He's 6'2 and a half, 230.
Oh, my
This
goodness.
kid could score. He doesn't look like that. He wears it well. I'm just saying, you look at him on the screen, he looks like he's about 5'10", 5'11". Kid's almost 6'3", runs with an attitude. He's a transfer in from New Mexico State. Yeah. He's blue-collar, athletic. Great vision. So I'll give my props to Mike Washington. I'm hoping that obviously Jackson Arnold and Auburn catch them.
But it isn't that so much about Arkansas. When they are good, historically, they run the football.
Yeah,
they've got a great running back, and he's a hog, and he runs it, and that's what they're. And Auburn historically is the same way.
Right.
They want to run that football.
Right.
And Arkansas wants to run it, so it'll be an interesting thing. Arkansas needs to run it. Auburn has been better running the ball than they were.
Right. Absolutely.
And, I think it's going to be who runs the ball best. Probably is going to be the team that wins.
Well, we'll see how that game plays out. 12:45, rain in the forecast. Be careful. I don't think this game will be pushed back from what I've read straight through Sunday. So it's in the slop in Fayetteville. We'll see how that game plays out. I think Auburn could potentially strike the minor upset on the road. It's amazing. Both teams winless in the SEC. 2 teams that are potentially dark horses, Coach, to make an SEC championship. I'm not laughing. I just think that if I would have told you Missouri and Vanderbilt at the start of the year would be fighting for potentially an at-large berth in the college football playoff, you would have told me I'm crazy. This Diego Pavia, though, is calling it into fruition. You want to talk about a blue-collar performance last week against LSU. He did it on the ground. He did it through the air. This front 7 by Vanderbilt, solid, 90 rushing yards per game allowed, 3.5 yards per carry, very physical. It's back-to-back road games to the Missouri Tigers, and Ahmad Hardy, as we discussed earlier today, hasn't been going in 2 weeks. He's been held by Alabama and Auburn to 58 and 52 yards back-to-back weeks. What I think is, and call me crazy, but the way Missouri runs tempo, and I know that they couldn't get it going against Alabama, and they certainly couldn't do it against Auburn.
Right.
I think they'll be able to do it against Vandy's front 7, and I think that's the difference between what we saw last week with LSU and what we see now with Missouri's tempo, I think Hardy gets back on track. I think they strike the upset, and I think that defense for Missouri is a little bit faster than people think.
Well, you know what? I've looked at this game, and it would not shock me if either team won the game. I think these are the two coaches, and along with the Texas A&M, they've done the greatest job of taking their teams where everybody could not think they could go. Who would have thought 5 years ago that when you look at the SEC, the top teams, 3 or 4 teams in the conference, record-wise, would include Vanderbilt and Missouri, both with one conference loss, both in the hunt for the conference championship game. But these two coaches have done a great job at these two schools. You add a little NIL, you add a little portal transfer, and all that sudden it transforms these programs into teams that can attract the type of athletes it takes to compete in the SEC. I'm going to tell you, but these two teams I really like. The coaches do a phenomenal job. I love the quarterbacks. Even Bo Prabula, he has a way of running the offense and playing the way they want him to play. But if there's one quarterback in the SEC that really controls the way a game is played and the way a game is won, is Diego Pavia. I compare him to Haynes King in the ACC at Georgia Tech. Give him the ball at the end of the game, and he will either hold on to the ball till the clock runs out, or he'll score on the final drive. And I think against Missouri, which is very much like Vanderbilt, two teams that are playing, great football, I'm going to stick with Pavia, but with a team that has Pavia, and that would be Vanderbilt.
Yeah, again, 3:30 kick. Again, whoever wins it is going to now inch right there with the likes of, the winner of Oklahoma and Ole Miss.
That's right.
You're going to have Georgia and Bama, and depending upon what happens with A&M as the top 3 teams, and you're going to have all 4 of these teams, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma, as that next tier right underneath that. So we'll see exactly what it does to the markets overall. I like the speed of Missouri. I like Ahmad Hardy to bounce back. Again, should be a very intriguing game at 3:30 afternoon.
I want to mention real quick, just so people understand how exciting it's going to be toward the end. In the SEC, there are 8 teams with 0 or 1 loss, from Vanderbilt to Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M. No or 1 loss in the conference. Still a lot of football to be played.
Absolutely. And again, the calm before the storm, because weeks basically 10 to 14, once you hit Halloween weekend, which is next week, all hell breaks loose. I could tell you crazy performances throughout the last 20 years on Halloween weekend where we've seen multiple top 10 teams go down in flames. So again, we're on the cusp. This is we're starting to build up to that pinnacle where, all the dominoes fall, and we have great action within the conference this week. Another 3:30 kick, and I'm on this one. This is another one of my best picks, Alabama and South Carolina. Alabama's played a gauntlet as well. When you think about the 4 teams, Georgia, Vanderbilt, right? Missouri, Tennessee. You basically had 2 rivalry games, 2 teams that were undefeated that were gunning for Alabama's best shot, right? And you had to play one at home and one on the road. This is not easy for Alabama then to go into Williams-Brice to face a dead and buried South Carolina team that is just playing for pride and is playing to get back to 500. And oh, by the way, last year they were in a similar situation and pushed Alabama to where they had to kick a game-winning field goal at the end of the game. So here we are yet again, and you're going to give me Lenora Sellers with 12.5 points. I know they let down against Oklahoma, but again, I think that'll be fuel. And on the road with Ty Simpson, I'm not taking away from Alabama, but I'm still not sold on the rush defense. I think that's where Sellers could be a problem. I don't say they win it, but I think they keep it 10 points or less.
Well, you got 11 points, 11 and a half. is the spread right now. And just the thing with South Carolina, they cannot get points out of their offense. They have been outscored. They've lost 4 out of the last 5. They've outscored 62 points in their last 4 SEC ball games. And it's probably the biggest disappointment in the SEC, if not FBS, has been South Carolina. And it's been their offense. They have not been able to produce. I'm not sure it was Norris's Sellers' fault at quarterback. It had to be something a little bit with other positions. They fired their offensive line coach a couple of weeks ago because of the number of sacks he was getting. And so I think they have got to produce. The biggest thing is they've got to have a great game. If they're going to come out of here and play close to Alabama, whether they beat them or not, to beat the spread, they've got to get a better performance out of Lenore's Sellers. He's in the last 3 games against SEC opponents, he's thrown for 153, 124, 124, and 153. That's the total yardage he's thrown for in the last 3 games. And so he's got to run for big yardage or throw for better yardage, but they're going to have to score points. If they're going to come out there and play within 10 points of Alabama, they're going to have to do something offensively.
Yeah, we'll see. And I think it's slowing down the tempo. Ugly game.
Yep.
See if you could utilize Sellers' mobility. I told you earlier when we did the show, I believe in at least their secondary.
Right.
Because what's the strength of Alabama? It's Ty Simpson. It's Ryan Williams. It's Jeremy Bernard.
Yep.
It's the passing attack. That's the one thing when you look at South Carolina's defense, they force you to work down the field. They're holding opposing quarterbacks to 59% completion percentage,
right.
Only 186 passing yards per game. They have forced 8 interceptions on the year, and they've only given up 7 touchdowns through 7 games. So for Alabama to have that type of success, I think South Carolina's defense potentially has to fall off a cliff. Maybe on the road in Tuscaloosa, not at home. And that's the only – if they were on the road, I'd be with you. But the fact that they're at home and they got embarrassed last week, I think it's a bounce-back effort. And you know, right, 18 to 22-year-old kids, it's sometimes you're hot and cold. One week you're high, one week you're low. It's hard to maintain that consistency.
Well, that's a great thing about football when you've got – it's not like tennis with one person plays against one person or wrestling or individual sport. You've got 11 personalities out there that have to blend together, and so many things can happen to have them play well, not well, play as a team, not play as a team, not deal well with adversity, respond to adversity, and come together. That's kind of the things that you're looking at right now, and we just have to guess a little bit of how they'll respond. We know who's played well. We know who hasn't played well. Right. But we don't know how a team's going to respond to what's happened in the past. Right now, Alabama has everything ahead of them right now as they try to separate themselves for the conference championship and maintain. And you got South Carolina, you know good and well, they're being challenged in their meeting rooms with their head coach and their coaches. They are being challenged to say, what are you made of? Where do we stand? What are you going to do now?
Absolutely. So we'll see. So you're late. You're taking Alabama?
I'm going to stay with Alabama. I really think. Here's what happened last week. I went with Tennessee,
right?
And they got beat by 18. I said, no way they're going to not get beat by 10. But Alabama scores just enough points, and that's a couple of touchdowns. I just think Alabama will get one at the end. They'll get a couple at the end. They've got some explosive players, so I'm going to stick with Alabama based on what I saw last week against Tennessee and their ability to score points.
Okay, there's 3 other big games left, right, in the conference. Okay. It's crazy, and we'll get to the big one in Baton Rouge in just a couple of seconds. But quick thoughts. I love Texas this week against Mississippi State. I know it's back-to-back road games, right? I get it. They laid an egg against Kentucky. Based off of principle, Coach, okay? You cannot, and we know Miss State is hard, and the Cowbells and Arizona State went in there and came out with a loss. I get that, and Tennessee basically was on life support. But if you have any type of moxie, if you have any type of pride, if you're considered a college football contender, You cannot, yet again, under Steve Sarkisian, lay an egg in a road environment. You did it against Florida. You almost did it against Kentucky. This has to be a get-right spot, if not for anything, because you have better athletes. You recruit. You're giving out Lamborghinis to every kid that goes to Austin. Show it now and win by a touchdown. I think Texas rolls against Miss State.
Well, I will say this: I think they should, and I'm going to take Texas. I think they will beat Mississippi. Mississippi State's kind of fallen off. I was really high on them the way they played early in the season, but they seem to have gone about as far as they could go. And now it's going to be grab a win here, grab a win there, try to get to a bowl eligibility situation. Texas, on the other hand, I think you mentioned something. They still have talent. They have NFL talent. I think when we talk about teams that are going to make the college football playoff or teams that are picked to do well at the end of the season, it usually goes along with how many people are going to have the most people drafted in the NFL. And Texas still is one of those teams that's probably going to have the most drafted in the NFL, along with 4 or 5 other teams. And that's why they should be playing better. The big if at Texas is the quarterback situation. Arch Manning, it was not as good as they hoped he would be. And now they're really at a point where is he as good as other people on our team, other quarterbacks? Boy, is that a tough decision. I'd hate to be the head coach having to say, okay, we're going to bench Arch and put somebody else in. Although with Ewers, they kind of went through that last year. But that's kind of where Texas is. But I do think Texas does have that NFL talent, does have some of the best recruiting in America, and that should result in wins against a team like Mississippi State.
Okay, so it's like almost like a double trouble or
Yep.
2 for 1. Ready? So if we lose this pick,
Yep.
you're right, which is good news because it's a 4 o'clock,
Yep.
right? We're coming right back with the other favorite, late night, Tennessee and Kentucky. Okay, Kentucky, right, is a dead and buried team.
Yep.
They have lost 4 games in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
They can't win. You saw Tennessee last week. It's back-to-back games. Tennessee has won 4 straight in the series, Coach.
Yep.
4 straight by an average margin of victory of 14.2 points per game. Here's another team. They have 2 losses in the conference. They can't afford a third. I know it's a back-to-back road games, but
Right.
if you're the Volunteers, you show out yet again. This Kentucky team has no offense, and they can't slow it down enough, I don't believe, against Tennessee's. I think Tennessee wins by 17 or more. So if we lose the Texas pick, don't worry. We'll get it back late night in Lexington.
Well, I think you're right. I think Tennessee has got too many weapons. You know, Kentucky is just – I mean, Stoops has done a great job there. He's won more than maybe people would have expected him. But I think he's on the downside of his career there. I think they are in that process of getting as much as they can out of the situation, but not enough enthusiasm, not enough oomph to get them where they need to be. And so the question is not, will Tennessee win this game? At 19.5, can they win by 3 touchdowns? And that's a tough call to make. Kentucky does, I think, because Stoops is kind of a defensive coach. They generally play a good, solid defensive game like they did against Texas. And so, although I haven't really picked this game, I think Kentucky will stay within 19.5 only because 3 touchdowns is hard to get against Kentucky to beat them by that much.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how that plays out. How about the big one in Baton Rouge? Okay, this one's basically a pick 'em. All right, so it's the first time, and I have to look exactly, but it's like the first time in like 8 to 10 years that LSU has been a home dog to any team outside Alabama. Okay, now here comes Marcel Reed and Mike Elko, right? You go, and we saw this game play out last year. This game was 21-10 at halftime, and all of a sudden, Elko pulled aces because he went to the bullpen. He pulled Connor Wegman at half. He brought in Marcel Reed, and Marcel Reed rushed for 62 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Blake Baker looked like he was a deer in the headlights because his defense couldn't contain a mobile quarterback. Well, now, guess what? They faced a mobile quarterback last week in Diego Pavia. They lost. They couldn't contain him. They're not going to have weeks. At some point, Brian Kelly's got to earn the pay at home. And again, they have a 15% chance to make the college football playoff. You're 2-2 in the conference. I didn't sign up for this. No fan for LSU signed up for this, but it's do or die, baby. I'm not betting this game in any capacity, but I would look to LSU only.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sitting there thinking Brian Kelly, when he went to LSU, he signed up for championships. That's why he went there. He said, I can win one better at LSU. I can sign a better quarterback at LSU, and he did. The people said, we'll pay that much money, but you better bring us a national championship playoff, SEC championship game. He hasn't done that. This would be the fourth year in a row that $100 million head coach is not going to get them to postseason in regard to conference championship game or the conference playoffs. And this game's going to have a lot to do with it. I just have to see it. And the thing about it is, Elko, head coach Mike Elko at Texas A&M, has got it figured out. He has done what Brian Kelly was supposed to do at LSU in 4 years. He's done in a couple of years at Texas A&M, and now they're sitting as the only undefeated team in the SEC is Texas A&M. And so again, the thing about Texas A&M, if they've got to score points, that's what they did against Notre Dame. That's what they did against Arkansas. If it's getting to a slugfest defensive outcome, that's what they did 16-10 against Auburn. They have shown they have the capacity to win it with their offense and win it with their defense. LSU's got to run the ball and then work vertically downfield with their passing game. Defense gave up too much yardage against Vanderbilt, and they did not do well again against a dual threat quarterback, which is what Marcel Reed is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna have to go with A&M. I'm gonna tell you, I've coached in that Death Valley. It's a tough place, but right now the fans are not going to be crickets, but they're not going to be. They're beginning to have doubt in the football team that's on the field.
We will see exactly. I think it's imperative for LSU to start fast.
Yeah,
something that again they didn't really do against Vanderbilt. They allowed Vanderbilt. No. They kicked the field goal on their first drive. That's all well and good, but then Vanderbilt comes right down, scores a field goal, and it's game on. You're playing catch up. You cannot do this against this offense in Marcel Reed. They're averaging consistently over 35 points per game, and this is a different animal. They have playmakers with or without Le'Veon Moss that can run the football. Owens as well. Again, I'm not betting this game in any capacity, but I would look to LSU, don't love it, and hope that Brian Kelly and the crew could bounce back in a big way. We'll turn our attention to the ACC. Georgia Tech and Syracuse. I told you when we broke down the conference on the podcast that, look, Georgia Tech is the best team in the conference right now.
Right.
You love Haynes King, and you've been dead on.
Yep.
Yet another 100-yard performance, 200 yards through the air. He is a playmaker with the game on the line. He could pull games out with the best of them. I'm still not sold on the secondary of Georgia Tech, and I think that's where, if you want to give me 17.5 with Fran Brown and that offense of Ricky Collins, that's averaging 294, I'm willing to take a shot. I'll take Syracuse plus the 17.5 against Georgia Tech this weekend.
Well, I think we've talked about this, and I just think Syracuse is struggling right now. They have had no productivity with this quarterback they're forced to go with, Ricky Collins. He has been unproductive, and Fran Brown knows how to develop a quarterback. He knows how to score points, but he can't get anywhere. They have been terrible. The quarterback's thrown more interceptions than he has touchdowns. He had 3 last week, and until they get that problem solved, they can't score points right now, and they are looking. I mean, they've lost they won their first 3. They won their first 3, then they lost 3 out of the last 4, and they are really struggling with what they're doing with Ricky Collins. So right now, I believe Georgia Tech's going to win the game, but right now, with the way Syracuse is playing and what I've seen offensively, I mean, to win by 17.5, they don't 21-3. They could be 21-3 or 24-6. It doesn't have to be that they score 50, but it doesn't take. It makes me wonder how much Syracuse can score with a quarterback that they don't believe in, that they have just been totally uncomfortable with, and Fran Brown says even himself, I have no answers right now to what our problems are with this quarterback.
So we'll see. I like Syracuse. Again, I don't think they win it. Obviously, I think they just lose it by 17 or less on the road in Atlanta. Another 12 o'clock kick, and the ACC is going to be locked and loaded at 12 noon because 3 straight games, Coach. Cuse, Georgia Tech, Virginia, North Carolina, and SMU and Wake Forest are all at 12 o'clock noon. So they set the stage basically for the SEC. We talked about last week the SEC's oldest rivalry, the Deep South. This is just the South's oldest rivalry, okay? Not the Deep South. Virginia and North Carolina. Virginia has lost 3 of the last 4 in the series. North Carolina won this game 41-14 last year. We saw Gio Lopez and the Tar Heels step up, almost make a statement. Last week, they covered but couldn't win the game against Cal. I know you love this Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris, completing 68% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think I want to take the points with North Carolina. Again, this is where you believe the experience of Bill Belichick in this type of game at this point in the season has to come to fruition, no?
Yeah, I mean, you would think it is, but we have not seen anything in the way they've played that would indicate that. Now, again, did they play last week? Did they play a better football game and had a chance to beat Cal? And really fumbling on the goal line at the end of the game, they would have beaten Cal. Watching that game, I had a feeling that it was Cal playing bad, not so much North Carolina playing good, because North Carolina has not played well against any of the Power 4 football teams. And so I don't have a lot of confidence in the way they're playing. UVA is just a team that finds a way to win. Now, if it was a close game, it would be easy to pick Virginia because they've won every game in the fourth quarter. A couple of overtimes, a safety in the fourth quarter to win their last game against Washington State. But I do believe they've got to score. They're averaging 40 points a game. They're only giving up. I mean, North Carolina's averaging 18.7 points a game, even when they play good. So I still think Virginia is on a roll and that they're a better football team. They're different teams right now. North Carolina under Belichick brought in 70. They brought in a new staff. They've had problems. Tony Elliott has invested a lot into this program, and they're finally doing what they need to do. They don't turn the ball over. That would be a difference maker if they were. They have had 0 fumbles this year at Virginia. They're winning close football games. Unfortunately, the spread makes us say they got to win by a good margin, and that's the only issue we have. But I'm going to stick with them. I think they're going to win by 10.5.
All right, we'll see. Let's turn our attention to the game. Probably the most competitive spread-wise. You have SMU laying 2.5 against Wake Forest. Little shocking, no, knowing how dominant SMU has been in the conference, knowing that they get the monumental win and revenge over Dabo and Clemson. They hand Clemson their 8th home loss dating back to 2015.
Yeah.
Third home loss this year. Now, that was with Chris Vizina, the backup quarterback for Clemson. But you're still talking about a team that put up 35 on that Clemson defense.
Right.
And as good as Wake Forest is, talent-wise, Dickert in year number 1 certainly doesn't have 4 and 5 stars like Dabo on the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, the fact that this line went down, Coach, from 3.5 to 2.5 is a little shocking to me, knowing that, obviously monumental win, but Wake Forest is 2-2 on the at home, and they were 1-5 last year with Clawson. I'm going to lay the 2.5. I still believe in SMU's front 7.
Yeah, I mean, I'm staying with SMU all the way. I think Wake Forest has done a great job. They're playing very well. They've had a couple of big wins after that just devastating loss to Georgia Tech in overtime that they lost. They're playing that good, and they come out there. They lost their quarterback. They had to put in a backup to Sean Purdy. What's he do last week against Oregon State? Throws 4 touchdown passes. So they've got a good positive feel at their football team. But Kevin Jennings and SMU has not lost a conference game in the ACC during the regular season since they joined the conference beginning of last year. They have found a way to win, and I guarantee it. Rhett Lashley is the head coach at SMU, along with Jeff Brom at Louisville, are two kind of coaches' names that don't get a lot of credit for the remarkable job they're doing.
Absolutely. Again, we'll see how that game plays out. Dickert has done a great job. You mentioned Deshaun Purdy. Right. He took over for Robbie Ashford that went down prior to the Oregon State game. Wake Forest does have an extra week of preparation.
Right.
I think that's another benefit as well. But again, we'll see how these games play out because ultimately it will dictate an ACC championship or conference title at the end of the regular season. Another game out of conference that we could look at in the Big Ten, Coach. You look at, and I know you're going to have feelings on this. We had talked about it, UCLA and Indiana. You potentially have the hottest team from just an emotional standpoint in UCLA and Tim Skipper, what they were able to do yet again, getting the victory last week. Neuheisel's son has done a fantastic job play calling. He's got that team up. They believe they can win against anybody. They make a cross-country trip to Bloomington at 12 o'clock against Kurt Signetti. I know you know Kurt, and you've talked about it, but the one thing Kurt loves to do, he loves to play bully ball, and when he smells blood in the water, he's like a shark. He'll go after your throat and look to pound you by 60 or 70. He don't care. 25.5 against the Bruins. I can't take this game. I would only look to Indiana. But just give me your thoughts about how this game shapes up.
Well, I mean, you've hit it right. UCLA, it's a different football team. Whatever the reason, if it was just better play calling or just a better atmosphere, since Deshaun Foster resigned as the head football coach or was fired, there's been a different feeling out there. They've won some football games. They've got a renewed confidence. And Kurt Signetti says that even. This is a different team. There are two different teams that have played out there this year. This is the new team, and we've got to get ready. Now, he'll want to score as many points as he can. That's his deal, and we know that. And that's why I think, you know what, and I really think they play such great defense. They run the football that they're going to that they will pile on and get the points. I think UCLA has had a wonderful story, but we're talking about teams trying to get ready for the national championship right now. Indiana, clearly the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. And I hate points like this. They just make me not want to pick this game. But I'm thinking the way Indiana's played. Now, I will say this does getting a brand new contract and your wife and your kids and sitting on the couch after you go home talking about how much the future is all taking. I mean, you're talking about now making about $100 million. Does that affect your mentality? I think with Kurt, it doesn't. He's driven, I've said this before, he's driven by respect. I think the fact that he decided, like his dad, his father was my coach at West Virginia, he's the head coach at IUP. He's the head coach at Elon. He's the head coach at James Madison. He coaches for respect. He wants people to respect him. So I don't think the money or all that money in that contract will make a difference in how he prepares. And I think that's huge for him. I think in a lot of ways, Lane Kiffin, the other hot name, I think he likes the fact that he might be the highest paid guy out there if he makes one more moon. I just think the ego gets a little more involved with that. I think Kurt focuses and say, you know what? I ain't finished here. If I'm going to stay here, I can't let this thing slow down. I've got to keep it going.
See, from taking the points a lot, right?
Yeah.
And you watch this game and it's like, here goes Kurt, right? Here goes Mendoza, 10 for 10 on the first 2 drives. You're down 14-0 already. Hang in there. And all Kurt Signetti is doing is running tempo and looking to put up another 14 points on your ass, and you're down 4 scores before you can even blink. That's why I can't take this game in any capacity.
Yeah.
He's done a fantastic job. Indiana, I believe, is much more physical this year than they were last year.
Yes.
If they do get into the college football playoff and it looks that way, I think they can make a run. What does that mean, big picture? I guess only time will tell, but we'll see exactly what transpires. Again, it's Indiana or bust for me. I tell you what, though, Coach.
Yeah.
I'll just say this. If somehow, some way, the kid and Tim Skipper pulled this game out, one, right? It's a feel-good story. Does Tim Skipper get the job? Because what I find intriguing, and I understand Neuheisel's son played there. They carried him off the field. He's been doing it. He's the spiritual leader in the locker room. I get all that. But Tim Skipper is the coach. Does UCLA turn around if this team all of a sudden reels off 6 wins? Does Skipper automatically get the job?
Well, you know, if they get 6 wins, if they beat this team, beat Indiana, and win most of their games down the road, it would not shock me. Now, what concerns you is it's Neuheisel that they took off the field on their shoulders. He is, and I'm good friends with his dad. He and I coached together when I was at Auburn. He was at Colorado and then Washington as a head coach. And if his son has a personality at all like his dad, it's a dynamic, fun, loving personality that those players will respond to. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they will they've already got themselves in a good finish. Not saying some of those coaches might stay on, but I think if they fired their coach this early, I just got a feeling they're going to go out there and try to, if they're going to do what they need to do, go get the best guy out there. If that's what they want to do. If not, if he wins a bunch, stay with him and go with it,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk a couple other games that you and I had broken down. We'll stick in the Big Ten. I find that this game is intriguing to me. Because it's Illinois and Washington.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I've heard reports and you read all about the news that Jed Fish is another guy potentially linked to all these jobs, right? And my first inclination is this. You left Arizona, right, to go to Washington. Bigger and better, the BBD, right? Now Washington is Don James. We're talking, Brunell and all the teams, Steve Entman, and think about it. And Lambright, remember when they had all that success and you knock off Miami in the home winning streak? Why would he want to go after just getting to Washington in 1 year? I don't understand. Like, that's a good job, Washington.
Well, I don't know that he wants to go now. We do know that his name's getting thrown out there by people who are not making the decision. Even if it was being thrown out there by people making the decision, that not necessarily his people. And so I agree with you. If you don't have roots back east or somewhere you want to come closer to your family or your parents or your children or those things that most people think about, there's not a better place to play and build a championship than Washington. If you don't have enough players in Washington, you sure as heck got enough players in California. And if you don't think that's enough, and you got some money, which they do, they can go pick up players anywhere they want to pick up. Great place to play, great tradition. They've had some great coaches. And so, no, I think when their names start getting thrown out like that, I don't think that has anything to do with whether those coaches are interested in those things or not.
Yeah, we'll see. Now, football-wise, I like this Washington team. I don't know. I like this kid Coleman. My I have 3 favorite running backs in college football. I love the guys that hit the weight room. I love those kids that run hard between the tackles, right? So everybody's talking about Jadarian Price and obviously Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. But Mike Washington, Arkansas, I love the 2 running backs for Georgia Tech, Holsley and Jamal Haynes. And I love this kid from Washington, Coleman. This kid is a bowling ball. He's 5'10", maybe at most, maybe on his tippy toes, he's 6 foot, but he goes about 215, 220. He's got arms like bowling balls. I love this team. Now, they struggle on the road, but at home, they're legit. Yeah. I'll take my shot I just think from a speed perspective, Washington with Damon Williams is faster. I believe in their defense. I actually think they win this game convincingly in Seattle.
Well, I don't know how convinced. I mean, I worry because Illinois has an off week. They've had some time to prepare. I do like Washington, and I like Washington to cover the points. I just think playing them there with the talent that they have, Desmond Williams, the quarterback, really is an outstanding dual threat quarterback that makes them attractive. And Luke Altmaier, I think, does a good job. Illinois has had one really bludgeon in their schedule. They played well the rest of the way, but I really like this Washington football team. I think they've kind of been overlooked. They're not talked about much.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you'll see them probably end up with 10 or 11 wins, 10 wins, and possibly in the college football playoffs.
All right, so last game we're going to cover is in the Big 12. And I know that this team was at the top of your list earlier in the year, and they let you down against Cincinnati. But now they have an opportunity, Coach. They have a shot. They're home. They'll get BYU undefeated. BYU right after the Holy War against Utah. Can Rocco Becht and Iowa State get back into the Big 12 mix? And I have to credit Kalani Sitake on this. You know, he's done a really good job. He loses his quarterback, Retzloff, to Tulane. He gets the kid Bachmeier in. They haven't missed a beat, Coach. 4-0 in the Big 12. Physical, 330 kicking names. Now, you know Matt Campbell. But I'll say this about Iowa State. Hornets Nest in Jack Price Stadium, that place is a hornet's nest. You better go in there prepared. I worry about BYU in this spot. I think it's a bounce-back spot for Iowa State. I'm going to take a shot and lay it with the Cyclones.
Boy, I tell you, I have a hard time not going with the Cyclones here, and I want to agree with you. I want to say Iowa State at home. It hasn't been. They've lost a game that I thought they could win. They're 5-2. They're still in the hunt. BYU kind of started out like this last year, 7-0, but they're playing a team that has an outstanding quarterback. Bachmeier's done a great job as a redshirt freshman quarterback, but I like Iowa State, and I like the fact that I like them at home. A bye week for Iowa State. They've had time to think about it. Good head coach, good assistant coaches. When you've got a bye week and you've got time, I think that goes in their favor. So I'm going to stay with Iowa State. I think they keep themselves in the hunt here. They know if they lose this game, they may still get to a bowl. But really the season is just another Iowa State season and not a great one.
Right, absolutely. And again, you have, I want to say, the experience at the quarterback position.
Right.
Why? Because even though Bachmeier's great, he's a redshirt freshman.
Right.
Rocco Becht, experienced, been in this spot, played in the Big 12 championship. This is a must-win game. I'd rather have the more experienced coach, more experienced quarterback in this particular spot. And the fact that they're at home, I just think speed-wise, Iowa State could exploit them this coming weekend. That's it, Coach. I mean, great games on tap. We have a lot to get to next week. We'll have a better determination and idea about which teams are really legit. Who knows? I mean, let me just ask you this before we go.
Yeah.
Any chance another domino could fall this weekend based off the outcomes in the head coaching circles? Could we see something like that? Maybe all of a sudden they say, you know what, after this weekend where if LSU loses, we're going to hear it, right? Do you think anything is going to fall this weekend or probably not?
I don't know. You've got, obviously Hugh Freeze at Auburn's got to win some ball. He's in a bad skid. LSU, the expectations are extremely high there. If something better doesn't happen there, I think those are two of the main ones that you've got to.
What about Ole Miss? If Ole Miss loses, you think that would be enough to push Lane to protect? Obviously, Florida would make a huge push. You think if they lose that game, there's the potential that on Sunday he's the new head coach of the Gators?
Well, I don't know if they're working on that time schedule to name someone, but I really think the more he sees that no matter how good he is, he can't win it all there. He's always going to be a little bit short. So I think if he were to get knocked off this week, it's more like against Oklahoma. He'll quietly behind the scenes be much more receptive. And in my mind, he's got one more move. If you think back in the day where he went from Oakland Raiders to Southern Cal and Tennessee,
Right.
the youngest coach in ever. He had very little success at the beginning. It affected him, and then he kept working and working his butt off. And from a coordinator at Alabama, he goes to FAU and wins big, and then to Ole Miss. And so I still think he's on a journey. He's not a guy that's kind of just I'm at my destination. I really think he's still on a journey. And you're right. If he does lose to Oklahoma, that starts to circulate and percolate in his mind that there's other places where I might have a better chance to get better athletes and win them all.
Yeah, I'll just say this about Oklahoma. Under Venables this year, 4-0 at home. They've had a dominant home record dating back. You could go back to the last decade. Oklahoma's won their 4 games against FBS and FCS competition this year by 22.2 points per game. So laying 4.5, 5 to Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. They're expecting Oklahoma to win this game. Again, styles make fights, and that's why we'll see how these games play out this coming Saturday. We'll be back next week, most likely 3 times next week. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. Enjoy the games, everyone. We'll see you next week.
All righty.